Okay, so we have our panelists here. You probably saw the flyer. I'll start with our first one. So it's Tanisha. Already I forgot the last one, so I won't butcher that, but she's here to share with us her background and her resources. I believe you graduated recently, like in 2021. So I'll let you say a little bit about yourself and we'll go through everyone and then we'll come back and have you go first.
Perfect. Yeah, my name is Tasha. I did graduate recently, so just in the summer of 2021. I majored in biological sciences, and then my second degree was global health. So I'm very excited to kind of talk a little bit more about how I ended up in the program that I'm in now, which is a master's of social work, and kind of a little bit about what that journey was like.
Caitlin?
Hi, everyone. My name is Caitlin Dinkle. I graduated from ASU in 2019 with degrees in global health and biological sciences. And I currently work in global health consulting.
And Renee?
Hello, my name is Renee Aguilar and pronouns she, her. I graduated from ASU with a BA in anthropology in 2002, and I'm currently working for an arts and cultural organization, Cultural Coalition.
Hey, and Sarah.
Hi, my name is Sarah Ventry. I graduated from ASU with a BA in anthropology in 2010. And I am an audio journalist and I make documentary podcasts.
So we have a series of questions that we asked each of the panelists based on a lot of the feedback that and questions we received from students. So I'm going to turn it over to Tasha to share.
Perfect. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen, and we'll get started. So my name is Tasha Parikh. Like I said, I did graduate fairly recently, and I figured I would talk a little bit about what I'm currently doing first, and then kind of explain a little bit of the path that I took to get there. I'm currently a full-time Master's of Social Work student at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. My primary concentration is interpersonal practice in integrated mental health and substance abuse, with a secondary concentration in global social work practice. And I will be beginning my field placement, which is kind of an internship that all social work students are required to complete, with Blend Health, which is a private practice mental health facility in Ann Arbor, beginning this January. I'm also currently a research assistant in the Level Up Lab that primarily is determining if a technology-based intervention could be useful in helping autistic adolescents just have better engagement in terms of employment opportunities and better employment retention. I will say, kind of getting into this next slide, my path to social work was very, I guess, unconventional. It took a little bit for me to figure out exactly what I wanted to do. So I initially started at ASU in 2016 with a degree. My primary major coming in was biological sciences with a concentration in neurobiology, physiology, and animal behavior. I also was pre-med coming in, and that was kind of my primary focus for most of my undergraduate career, was that I wanted to go into medicine and practice medicine. Pretty quickly, I decided that I wasn't kind of satisfying my need for humanities as much as I wanted through my biology degree. So I added global health within my first year and kind of continued with that. From there, it gets a little bit confusing. So I started researching while I was at ASU, which I highly recommended. It was probably one of the most interesting experiences that I had, even though ultimately I didn't decide to kind of pursue that area of interest. It really gave me a lot of the skills that I needed to pursue research. in areas that I am interested in. So I worked at the Velasquez Laboratory of Neurodegenerative Diseases, working primarily on Alzheimer's research for a few years during my undergrad. And then summer of 2017, I completed my study abroad internship with IAPA, which is the International Alliance for the Prevention of AIDS in Chennai, India. I actually finished that with another panelist here, Caitlin. So that was a really kind of influential program for me. One, it really helped me solidify my interest in global health, in public health, in kind of this realm of like human-centered healthcare, rather than kind of being a little bit more interested in the technical or biological aspects of it. And it really helped connect me with a broader group of people that were very motivated to learn and very motivated to kind of pursue a variety of different fields, which really opened up the things that I was looking into for myself. So with that being said, the kind of gap between 2017 and 2021 is pretty large. And a lot of that was that I struggled tremendously with my biology degree while I was at ASU. So if anyone has any questions further about that, I am happy to talk about my experiences. Because although I did end up completing that degree and completing my pre-med prerequisites, it was a very challenging process. I repeated plenty of classes in that process, kind of had a very difficult experience with my own mental health, and really used a lot of ASU resources to help kind of pull me out of that place. So I can definitely touch more on that as well. And then I decided to take a semester off right around the time that COVID was starting, and then came back for a year completing my biology and global health degrees. A big part of that was also completing an internship program with the COVID-19 case investigation team for one of my classes, which was actually run by Dr. Megan Jean. I don't believe that they're currently operating just due to the kind of lower case numbers in Maricopa County, but it was also a really fantastic program to just be a little bit more familiar with kind of the inner workings of like the public health system in Maricopa while, you know, we were dealing with the entire COVID-19 situation, and then definitely ongoing. And then following graduation, kind of at the end of summer of 2021, I was really looking to find an opportunity that allowed me to be in mental health and kind of be in that space without any experience. So I had no psychology degree, no psychology classes on my transcript, hadn't really explored that field or that area of interest at all. But I felt very certain that I kind of wanted to pivot towards that. So I did what I think is most appropriate in that space, is really connect with the people that you know already and see if you can find a connection to an organization that you are excited about. So for me, I was able to connect with Dr. Sabit Boya, who is the director of the Cactus location of Community Bridges, which, if anyone's familiar with that, it is a substance abuse and mental health treatment facility that operates at a number of locations around the valley. And I worked as a case manager at that location for about a year while I was applying for social work programs. And at this point, I am now kind of fully immersed in my social work program, very excited to see where it leads me. Definitely kind of working towards being a private practice therapist, getting licensed. But because of my secondary or like dual pathway program, I'm still kind of able to utilize a lot of what I learned through global health and also still explore that area of interest as I continue, which is really important to me. So yeah, that's all I have for now. I figured we do any questions now, or Karita, do we want to kind of do questions for everyone at the end?
Okay. I guess if there's a quick question, if people want to put that in the chat,
Sure.
but we'll keep going and then we'll circle back at the end. Okay. So thank you. Thank you.
Of course.
Okay. So next we have Caitlin.
Great. I'm also going to share my screen. Okay. So hi, everyone. Like I said earlier, my name is Caitlin Dinkle. I graduated from ASU in 2019 with dual degrees in global health and biological sciences. And I also got 2 minors in Spanish and statistics. So my path in global health has been quite varied. I was interested in a lot of different things. And so I think my overall experience was just trying to figure out what things stuck. I was ever like adapting and evolving, and then eventually, toward the end of my ASU experience, figured out I wanted to go into epidemiology. And I actually graduated in 2019. So I was in grad school for infectious disease epidemiology when COVID hit, which was quite a fun experience. I went to Johns Hopkins, and a lot of my professors were very intimately involved in pandemic response and forecasting, which was a great learning experience for me as a young epidemiologist. And so I got to take that experience into my current position at Linksbridge, which is a global health consulting company based out of Seattle. And we work with a lot of international players like the Gates Foundation, UNICEF, WHO, and I'm actually still working on COVID forecasting. So it's a big part of my life. But I think my path in global health really started actually when I was 17. I was a part of Tempe Sister Cities. I'm from Tempe, Arizona. And that was my first real international experience where I got to go abroad and meet a bunch of different kids from all over the world. And I just said, I want to stay in this international environment. I had an interest in health already, but this just shaped that I need to go into global health. So I entered ASU first semester as a global health student. From there, I was in love with my classes, but it's actually when I was taking the HIV course that prepared me for the IAPA internship with Tasha, I realized I like these technical questions. I like epidemics. I like these diseases, and I want to know more about them. So I added a biological sciences major as well. And so again, ever adapting, evolving, I was in biology and I was like, well, I don't want to be a doctor, but I like all these questions and problems. Maybe I'll look into statistics and see if I can go down this epidemiology route. So I added that minor. Spanish was also like, I want to work with the international community. I should speak a second language. So I added Spanish. And so again, just like course correcting, seeing what I liked, what I didn't like. I did a bunch of internships during my time at SHESC. I was in Dr. Wittich lab. I was in Dr. Trumbull's lab. I did the IAPA internship. I worked with Dr. Mubai, and I worked for the American Red Cross. I just tried anything, everything. Some of it was interesting, some of it was not, but all of it was relevant to stuff I did later on. And then I did my grad program, like I said, in infectious diseases. And while I was there, I had the opportunity to work for the Gates Foundation for my summer internship. I worked with the enteric and diarrheal disease program, which was actually directly because of my work in Dr. Wittich's lab, where I was focusing on some surveys to do with cleanliness and latrines. And I really got to highlight the experiences I had at SHESC to get this internship at the Gates Foundation, which was super cool. But that internship let me know that I was really interested in vaccines. So I went back to Hopkins and I was like, okay, I'll add a vaccine certificate. And then that got me work with COVID and understanding vaccine hesitancy and really relating back to surveys and survey methods that I learned at SHESC. So again, all these different experiences, even if they didn't stick, were relevant to other things. And from there, I learned about Linksbridge and I got to apply my experience with COVID and modeling and forecasting that I had learned for my thesis at Hopkins. And that got me where I am now. So to talk a little more about my current work, like I said, I work a lot on vaccines. One of them is COVID-19. So we're working on understanding what current countries are doing for their pandemic response, what age groups they're vaccinating, if they're revaccinating, and we're trying to see what does that future look like right now. That's a very uncertain space to be in. So we're trying to figure out does this look like a flu shot every year? Does this look like just vulnerable populations are going to get it? So lots of really interesting questions and lots of cool discussions that you get to have with your peers that are all passionate about global health, but all have very different paths to get here. So I think that's a universal experience. Everyone has a very unique path. Some people were in the Peace Corps, some people came directly from the pharma industry. I have a couple social workers on my team as well. And so beyond COVID-19 questions, I'm also working on some of the routine vaccine markets. So that's understanding, again, like which countries are vaccinating, which specific vaccine products, and how can we help introduce vaccines into countries that need it. And so that's a lot of work with like the Gates Foundation, who is our primary funder. And then from there, it's very exciting. We're expanding to work on like upcoming vaccines. So like there's a chikungunya vaccine in the market right now. And so what does that look like? Who would be even interested in that kind of vaccine? So lots of different questions, lots of communication with partners, lots of understanding what they want us to do since we are consultants and what kind of questions and problems they want us to solve. And I get to really apply my wide variety of qualitative and quantitative methods that I learned at ASU and at Hopkins to like answer these questions. So I think that summarizes about what I've been up to and what I do, but my general advice for you all as students is really to take advantage of any and all opportunities that you can as soon as possible, because like I kept saying, every single experience I had was very relevant to another one later. And it really helped me figure out what I was interested in, what I was not interested in, and gave me the opportunity to correct and figure that out as I went along. Yeah. Hope that's helpful and happy to answer any questions at the end.
Thank you. Okay, Renee, I think our next panelist.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. I do not have anything to share in terms of a presentation. I might share my screen later just for some references to some websites. But I am currently the Assistant Director for Cultural Coalition, which is an arts and culture organization. And my path there was very much roundabout. When I was at ASU, the School of Human Evolution and Social Change didn't exist yet. I went to the anthropology department. That's where I come from. My focus was Mesoamerican and Southwestern cultures. And I kind of always knew that that's what I wanted to do ever since I was a kid. I fell in love with Indiana Jones, even though now we know he was a horrible archaeologist and destroyed every temple he went into. There was something about discovering and connecting and learning about cultures and finding out more about ourselves as like humans, and how there's still things that even though we think we know everything, we're continuously learning. And so I decided I was going to be an archaeologist. And then after being an archaeologist, I was going to be just like Indiana Jones, and I was going to work in a museum or teach. And that's kind of what happened. I finished my degree in 4 years, which was kind of unheard of at the time. I went in for anthropology and I stayed with that particular degree the entire time. After graduating, I went and visited the city archaeologist's office in Phoenix and said, "Hey, I'm ready to work. What do we do?" And he handed me a list of different contract archaeology companies in the state. And I just started sending out my application everywhere, got hired, and started digging in the desert. From there, I realized this is a hard job. And I had a student advisor at the time at ASU who actually pulled me aside one point during my ASU career and was like, "Just so you know, this is not a career to get into for money." And he was right. Same thing with nonprofit and museum careers. If you're in it for the money, don't just stop, walk away, try something else. If you're in it for the love of discovery, of culture, of art, of connecting to humans and learning more about who we are and who we are together, then stay with it. I'm stayed with it for 20 years because I do what I love. I don't have the biggest paychecks, but I love going to work. And I love the fact that I feel like I'm giving back to my community and I am helping in a way that is significant, that isn't pushing paper or stuck behind a computer all day. I'm out there and really connecting with people. After I decided that I didn't want to dig in the dirt anymore, I was like, okay, let's try this museum thing out. And unfortunately, there weren't a lot of archaeological museum studies programs in the United States at the time. So I found one in England, where museums started, because that's, they started looting first. And the museum program that I found was specific to archaeological collections in museums. So really specific, kind of limits where you can go, that's what you think. But as Caitlin said, you can always learn something that can be applicable to other positions. And what I learned during that was, as Caitlin mentioned, take those internships, do those volunteer programs, talk to your professors and see if they could use a student worker or some help, because you can do all the book studying and write all the papers and submit all the proposals. But what people really want to know is what's your practical experience. And honestly, the most helpful classes for me while I was at ASU were the field study programs, where we actually got to learn how to excavate, how to catalog, how to clean and prepare artifacts, how to identify certain things. The most practical experience you can get will be the most helpful. And then, of course, making those connections, as Caitlin said, finding those people who are in the fields that you're working in. Unfortunately, it is a lot of who you know, not so much what you know. And so making those relationships is really important. My career went from, again, digging in the dirt to internships at the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles. And then I got a job here in Phoenix at the only Southwestern Archaeological Site museum in Phoenix, which is Pueblo Grande Museum. From there, I was doing some collections work and ended up finding out that hanging out in the back with all the artifacts, which I originally thought was what I loved and wanted to do, was really more exciting when the kids would come and you got to talk to the kids and share the interpretation of why is this core so exciting and what do these flakes mean, and why is a rock something that we dig up and we keep and we put a number on and we put in a box and then put into our system in the back. Explaining to them that they're standing on the ground of the ancestral Sonoran Desert people who built the largest canal system in North America, and that's how we get our water, and they have no idea. Just having those kind of aha moments and like seeing just like the discovery in their faces was what I was like, okay, maybe I'm really more in the front of the museum instead of the back of the museum. And so my career took me to educational programs, special events, and marketing, because if you're interested in getting into museums and nonprofits, you'll soon find out that usually there's a crew of like 5 to 10 people in most of these places. The largest institution I've worked for so far is the Phoenix Art Museum. And even there, every little department is its own kind of little thing, and you end up taking on 10 jobs. So I ended up, moving into a part of my career that went away from academia and went more into educational programming for youth and adults, community outreach and interpretation. From there, as I mentioned, I kind of started moving into an arts kind of vibe away from museums and archaeology and anthropology. Made it over to the Phoenix Center for the Arts, where I was really focused mostly on arts education and events and marketing. But throughout my career, I'd always kept in touch with a lot of people that I'd worked with over the years. I have experience with grant writing, and one of the organizations that we wrote a grant for through the City of Phoenix Office of Arts and Culture was to put an installation up at Pueblo Grande Museum that was reflective of the Sonoran Desert people and the work that they have done in terms of their water canal systems. And I kept in touch with them. And during the time of COVID, many museums closed, as you know. 60% of the museums in the United States were either closed or operating on some sort of virtual platform. In Phoenix, it was about the same. And so a lot of us got let go. But I reached out to all my connections, and I found one who was like, well, we're pivoting real hardcore to virtual. We could use your help. And that's how I ended up contracting with Cultural Coalition, who I am currently the assistant director for now. They're a small arts organization, but they've been around for around 25 years. They're started by local artists, but they're also very involved in the community in terms of ethnography, indigenous cultures, and interpretation, storytelling, and educational programming. They have a large artist's collection of ethnographic and performance pieces, which they have decided they would like to turn into their legacy project of creating their own museum. And so, full circle, I am back now working with collections and cataloging and curating and, putting together hopefully soon traveling exhibitions. We're working on our online collection right now, but it's a very small organization. And so I still get to use every single one of those other skills that I've learned from grant writing. I cannot stress that enough. If you're going to any nonprofits, learn how to ask for money, write for money, get NEA grants, get local grants, find other organizations that are interested in funding your projects. That is something that will be significant in every way for you. But also get to help out with marketing and educational programs. And we just finished up our largest festival, which was the Miquixli Dia de los Muertos Festival, which was at Steel Indian School Park this weekend. And I can still say that, after all these years, I still do what I love. It's still a passion of mine. I still enjoy going to work every single day. And because of COVID, though, I feel like I've even forced myself to even find a more healthier balance. As Tasha had mentioned, mental health is very important. And finding a career that gives you that opportunity to still be happy and enjoy what you're doing, and when you wake up and be excited to go to work, while also giving yourself some time to take care of yourself and put yourself first. I've been really fortunate to find that kind of an opportunity within an arts and cultural organization where I can still put into practice my anthropology and museum studies degrees. I am going to just drop a couple of things in the chat. Our website, our newsletter sign up, and some of the different projects that we're working on, including a Google arts organization virtual exhibit that I helped create for one of my past museums, just to show you, some of the different things that are possible with an anthropology degree. And I'll also put in my email in case you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. That was wonderful. Everyone so far, wonderful. So, Sarah's next up to share.
Okay. So my name is Sarah Ventry. I am an audio journalist. I report on religion and I make documentary podcasts. There's a link to my website and my email address. There's a slide at the end that has that too. So I majored in anthropology at ASU. I took a very long time to graduate college. I started in 2003, and I didn't finish until 2010. Um, I had had some kind of difficult family stuff and home life things that had happened right at the end of high school, and it made the beginning of college really challenging. And I was trying to double major in anthropology and African American studies, and wound up dropping my major to a minor. I really respect Tasha for talking about the um, difficulties and the challenges that she had, and the need to take classes more than once, which was also true for me. And I think it's something that, we don't talk about a lot, but definitely happens. So it was a really roundabout path, and I felt really um, kind of ashamed about it and weird about it for a while. And I had this incredible professor at ASU who told me that, life doesn't happen in, not only does life not happen in a straight line, but we don't get to tie everything up neatly. And those frays and edges create texture in our life. And so that is something I've carried with me a lot. Um, I took a lot of really incredible classes at ASU. A few of the ones that stuck out to me when I was thinking were, I took classes about race and racism in the US. I took a sociocultural research methods class, which was incredible, and has helped me a lot. It still helps me in my work, and anthropology and human rights. I thought I was going to be an archaeologist too, much like Renee. And I also idolized Indiana Jones before I realized that he's not so great. And I took a lot of archaeology classes at ASU and did a lot of field work and did multiple field sessions over the summers and things like that. And it is a really difficult, as Renee said, it's a really difficult job. It's very tedious. And I realized that where my heart really lay was like with talking to living people and talking to people who can answer back, and really being in communities with people. And so for me, sociocultural anthropology was a better fit. But I did work a lot of on-campus jobs. I was a research assistant in an archaeology lab. I was a research assistant in a paleo anthropology lab. I was a tutor in the Disability Resource Center for students that needed help writing. And I was the music director at the ASU radio station. So it was kind of like a varied experience. College radio was really important to me, and I highly recommend. I guess I wanted to just say too that some of the things I did at the time, people around me were like, why are you doing that? How is that going to help you? What is the purpose of that? And I kind of, especially when I was in college, was really just like, I'm going to do everything I'm interested in and not ask what the end goal is. And I think that actually was a really beautiful thing. And that picture of me on the right, where I'm just surrounded by, in the mid 2000s, where just being surrounded by CDs and old computers and tons of things to listen to and discover. Maybe it's still one of my favorite pictures of me. It makes me very happy. So when I was in college, in addition to working the on-campus jobs, I worked off-campus jobs, and I really loved music. And like I said, I worked at the college radio station. And so I started doing some freelance writing about music and arts for some local publications, little tiny things that don't exist anymore that no one would have ever heard of. I either wrote for free, or there was one place I wrote for where they paid me in coupons or gift certificates from their advertisers, and they would give me gift certificates for chicken wings in exchange for writing album reviews and stuff. So I don't recommend working that way, but that was what I did at the time. And then eventually I started working for the Phoenix New Times as a freelance writer. And then I kind of moved from there. After I graduated from ASU, I got an internship at NPR in DC with this podcast called All Songs Considered. And this was in 2010, when podcasts were really, really, really brand new, and they were still listened to on an actual iPod. And it was with NPR Music. So it was a very my part of my job was to assist with tiny desk concerts and things like that. So I had this very dreamy kind of internship, and I feel very lucky to have had it. And I also just want to say, I do recommend internships and fellowships and getting as much experience as you can. I think that's really important. And I will also say to keep in mind that some of that is a product of luck, and some of it is like the stars aligning at the right time, and some of it is like hustling. And so it is who you know, it's also what you know, it's also being in the right place at the right time. It's like a lot of things. So I just want to like, I think for me, like one big takeaway from all of this is to just like try as many things as you can and not feel uncomfortable if they, or to sit with the discomfort if they don't kind of take you the place that they think they're going to take them. If they don't take you to the place you think they're going to take you, sorry. After my NPR internship, I had trouble getting work. I wanted to work at NPR. They have this system where they hire these temp workers to be producers on the news shows. I didn't know how to edit audio. I didn't know how to cut tape. I didn't know any of these things. And I taught myself how to edit audio by asking people, how do you cut tape? And I would sit with them for an hour while they showed me. And then I would just ask them to let me into the building, and I would sit at computers and go pull the interviews that the hosts had done for Morning Edition in the morning and try to cut them myself and see how they sounded and ask people to listen to them. So there was a lot of self-teaching. It took about 6 months, and I had to work during that time as a, my NPR internship was unpaid also, and I couldn't afford to live in DC. So I worked as a live-in housekeeper in exchange for free rent during my internship. I worked as a daytime bar manager while I was hustling for temp work, and then eventually got some temp work and built on that. Ended up working as a producer and an editor at NPR headquarters for almost 4 years. Then I came back to Phoenix, which is where I grew up, and worked at KJZZ, the NPR station here, as a senior producer for their daily local affairs news show. I started doing religion reporting while I was there. And then in 2018, I left public radio to make documentary podcasts. And so these are some of the covers of some of the podcasts I've worked on. They're about a lot of different things, but they do have some things in common. And I'm really proud of the work I've done for these shows. So like, I guess it's a little bit tricky for me to figure out the best way to condense this, because I worked kind of in different roles on these different projects, but they were all things that involved big questions about how the world works, how communities work, justice, what is right and what is wrong. Damages is a show about climate change and environmental justice. This Land is a show about the Indian Child Welfare Act and an investigation that found that there is a huge coordinated effort of people, everybody from gas and oil interests to private adoption industry to evangelical Christian adoption agencies, that want to dismantle this law that's supposed to protect Native children. That podcast was nominated for a Peabody. It's one of the most proud things that I've done in my career. I was not the host of it, but I was really honored to get to work on it as a producer. And then I made a couple of other podcasts about religious communities that kind of challenge what it is that we understand in terms of religious freedom in this country. And the reason I'm saying all of this is because I think that a lot of people who know they want to be a journalist major in journalism, which is great, but I didn't know I wanted to be a journalist. I knew that I was interested in people, and I knew that I was interested in communities. And a lot of what I learned about in the anthropology department, particularly around culture, being an observer, like cultural relativism, how to think about places and people that aren't the same as you. All of those things really played a role in how I think about approaching my journalism, so much so that this podcast that I made called Unfinished Short Creek is about the FLDS community, the fundamentalist Mormon community on the Utah-Arizona border, that's famous because they practice polygamy and because their prophet is Warren Jeffs, who's in prison for sex crimes. So I reported on this community for about 4 years. And then before I made a podcast about it, as part of the reporting, I decided I wanted to live in the community. And that was very much a decision that came from my time as an anthropology student and really thinking about the power of ethnography and the what it means to really show up for someone that you're reporting on, and what it means to truly like try to understand where your sources are coming from. And also to break down some of the power differential that journalists have with their sources. So when you're a journalist and you kind of swoop in for a week, you're in this immense, I mean, you're always in an immense position of power as a journalist, and I take that responsibility really seriously. But when you come in for just a week, you have this opportunity to leave and go home, and it can feel very, very extractive. And I wanted people in this community to see me when I wasn't at my best too. So they saw me when I was having a bad day and like trying to go to the grocery store, or when I needed to go, you can't drink the tap water there, you have to go to this canyon and get the water. So they'd see me like struggling to lift these water jugs, and they would, see me at 11:30 at night at a city council meeting when I was really tired. So I wanted to break down some of that. And I'm really quite proud of this podcast. And if you want to listen to it, it's available anywhere you get your podcast. But it was really came from this concept of like, what is the middle ground between anthropology and journalism? And how do I incorporate what I learned about the best parts of sociocultural anthropology with the best parts of journalism? And I don't think we always fire on all cylinders, but that was my goal, is to like really try to understand how can we use those two disciplines to create something new and special. So making documentary podcasts is, I don't want to take up too much time because I want a lot of time for questions, but there's a lot of pieces to it. And it means you get to work lots of different parts of your brain and with lots of different people and do a lot of really interesting collaboration. It's very fact-based, but it's also very creative, which I love. And really getting to connect, like getting to inhabit these places that I would never otherwise get to be in, talking to people I would never otherwise get to speak with. It is really like the greatest joy for me. And I've gotten to, sit in on a fundamentalist Mormon church service. I've done interviews in brothels. Like I've been to all of these different places that are kind of like places I would never get to see otherwise. And I feel really grateful. And I feel like it's a huge privilege when people allow me into their lives. And that is my favorite part of my job. Can be a very challenging job. It's easy to get lost in the story. You're often working with issues around trauma. You're working on deadline and often to these like commercial funders, but you still want to make something that's really beautiful and nuanced, and that takes a long time. So there are definitely challenges to it. But it is a really, like I said, working especially long form is a really big luxury for journalists. And so I feel really grateful I get to do that. But like I said, podcasting is actually quite new as a field. In 2010, there were no documentary narrative podcasts. Like if you think about it, really when Serial came out, it changed everything in the podcasting world. And so when I was a student at ASU, this job didn't exist. The job that I have didn't even exist. And so really thinking about like how I got from where I was to where I am, it was this very kind of curvy, windy, strange path that I would have never, like I could have never ever predicted that this is where I would have ended up. Okay, so a little bit of advice before we go to questions. So I'm a hustler baby from Jay-Z. This is true. Like, I think this is a field where you have to be a hustler and you have to really, it's a super competitive field. It's hard to find work. It's hard to keep work. It can be very discouraging. You can often be competing with people that you're friends with, and it can be really hard to stay grounded. But I think like having a sort of drive and deciding that this is something you want to do and you're willing to kind of take that windy path, knowing that you might so my internship at NPR, I was 25 when I did it. I was older than a lot of the other interns. And I think that I was okay with that, but I know not everybody is. So to me, it's also just kind of like letting go of the expectations that you have that you're going to be sort of like graduating college and then going immediately to your career. Some people are able to do that, but not everybody is. I would say don't be afraid to lose yourself and take creative risks. When I was student in the anthropology department, I was working in the anthropology lab. I had a professor who became a really great mentor to me, and she gave me opportunities I wouldn't have had otherwise. She let me take upper division classes when I was a freshman. She gave me this work study job in her lab. She really kind of took me under her wing. And when I decided I wanted to start taking African and African American studies classes, focus more on sociocultural anthropology, I was really afraid I was going to disappoint her. I was really afraid I had spent all of this time doing this thing that like now I'm not going to be able to do. And what if it was all just a waste of time? And what if I don't like this other thing? And when I went to her and told her I'm not going to continue working in your lab because I'm going to do this other thing, she was very supportive, like a good mentor should be. And she told me, like, stay in touch with me. Let me know how it goes. Like, I'm excited to hear what you end up doing. And I think had friends and mentors not told me it's okay, like if you're not sure, if you want to explore it, now is the time to explore it. Had nobody told me that, I think I would have probably ended up in a job that I didn't like very much. Everybody also told me it's a marathon, not a sprint. And I didn't really understand that for a long time. But I think I was feeling very inadequate for a long time that, the people around me were sometimes younger than me. I felt like I wasn't advancing fast enough. I was like, how do I get this job that I really want to get? I mean, I also thought I was going to be a music journalist and like a music critic. And when it wasn't working out to do that, I really kind of panicked. And now I feel like doing work in the realm of religion and documentary storytelling is where I want to be and where I feel happiest. But had I forced myself onto that sprint, I don't know that I would have found that. And then the best piece of advice that I ever got from one of my mentors, Linda Holmes at NPR, is not hearing back from someone isn't a rejection. And sometimes even a rejection isn't a rejection. And that has served me so well, because I think the other thing is you have to really push past what can feel like a lot of rejection in a lot of fields. I mean, I think all the fields that everyone on this panel is talking about are competitive fields where there are more people who want to do the job than there are jobs. And so it feels very scary. And sometimes it means like I don't work full-time at a company. I'm a freelancer and I make enough money to be a full-time freelancer, but I don't, it's not like nobody told me like, if you do this internship, then you'll get hired here, then you'll get hired here, then you'll get hired here. It was more like, how can I do what I want to do? What is it that I want to do? How can I piece that together? And sometimes that means taking on audio editing work that's not the most interesting thing I've ever done, but I add it to my sort of like rotation so that I can keep making the stories I want to make. And I think knowing that I just had to keep kind of like reaching out to people and like asking questions and applying for things and not hearing back from people and like, not feeling like a pest, but just keep going at it, is the only reason I was able to eventually get the temp work at NPR that led me to all the other things. Okay, so that's my website. Oh, I was sorry, I meant to put the Twitter handle. It's at Sarazona. I'll type it in the chat, and that's my email address too. Oh, Karita, you're muted.
Yep, I'm talking and having a great conversation with myself. So thank you everyone for sharing your insight, your wisdom, your experiences, your journey. I think really some thoughtful ideas here. So we have some time now just for questions, for dialogue from anyone, any of the students that want to share. You're welcome to unmute. You're welcome to put it in the chat, or even if you just want to open up your camera and share. So we have some time for that. Okay. So while people are thinking, because sometimes it takes just one to ask a question at first, there are some common themes, some common storylines, and each of you are at different places, I think, in your career journey. So, and then all of you also talked a little bit about changes in the midst of COVID. So I guess what wisdom would you share with students with how careers, jobs have changed in the midst of COVID? Like what would you recommend for students to do now, because it's different compared to 2019? So anybody can share, or all of you could share. We get that question from students often.
I'll jump in first. I think, obviously disease related aside, COVID opened up the opportunity to meet with more people because everyone was just at their laptops more open for video calls than I had experienced before, where you kind of had to catch someone in person. Now people are very used to video calls, and that could be on an international lens if you can figure out the time zones. And so I think taking advantage of the fact that people are more accessible through video chats is amazing, to reach out to people in different time zones and have those chats if they're interesting to you.
Awesome.
I think just going off of that and kind of tying into a lot of what both Renee and Sarah said, there's this emphasis on it. I think all of us kind of experience some level of having to cold call in some way. There is almost nowhere that you're going to get where the doors are just automatically open. It does require some level of just finding the people that you're interested in and asking them to have conversations. I know when I was kind of deciding to go back to school, the experience of that, or even working at Community Bridges, a big part of it was like not really having any contacts in this space since it had nothing to do with what I had studied. And in order to kind of find those people, I really just had to investigate, find people that I thought were cool or doing jobs that I wanted to do or wanted to know more about, and send emails and ask for time. And I think, like Caitlin said, the cool thing about this space that we're in right now is that there is an opportunity to get someone kind of face to face over a camera pretty easily. So if you can find somebody that is willing to give you 15, 20, 30 minutes of their time so you can pick their brain, it's probably going to be your best bet to end up wherever it is that you want to.
Awesome. Thank you.
I would say one of the things that I learned being, I think, in the professional realm a little bit longer than some of our other panelists was that there's no such thing as loyalty to an organization, because they are not loyal to you. Be loyal to yourself. You don't owe them anything. You know, like you need to find the job that works for you, the work-life balance that works for you. And I think one of the things that COVID really showed us was we had all been telling ourselves that we needed to, you know, grind, hustle, you know, work 24 hours, put ourselves second, make sure that we were giving everything we could, spending those extra hours, those extra days, that extra time, that extra mental capacity to our jobs instead of ourselves. And COVID was like, no, you can stop. You can work from home. You can take a mental health day. You can find a work environment that fits you. Because as you know, many of us found out, we were very expendable. So I am just 110% thankful that I did find an organization that I was able to find that beautiful balance of they respect you as a human and they respect the work that you're doing, and they realize that you are an actual person and not just some sort of productivity wheel. And I would say value yourselves, all of you, value yourselves that way.
I think the only thing I would add is that now that we're in the part of the pandemic that we're in, and it's not 2020 or 2021 anymore, think about what it means to show up IRL in a safe way. And like, I think that utilizing Zoom and video calls and like being able to connect with people far away is beautiful, and we should continue to absolutely do that. And I think that so a lot of the communities I work in, I work with typically very insular religious communities, new religious movements, groups that are sometimes called cults, and they don't want, like a lot of times those folks might not have easy access to Zooming, or that might not be like a thing that they usually do. And so for me, like figuring out how do I show up and meet someone where they're at, knowing it might look very different than where like the rest of my professional landscape is at right now is really important. So, and I try to think about how that applies in other situations too. So like for sure what everyone else is saying, to utilize those tools and think about like, who are the people you're trying to connect with and what is the way that makes sense? Because I do think sometimes now that we're in this place, it becomes very easy to sort of lean on the like a Zoom call versus like going to a community in person or something like that. So, and I'm pro masking and taking appropriate precautions and keeping yourself and the other people you're working with safe, but also to think about how can I safely show up for someone.
Awesome. Thank you. So there's just a comment. So Sailor said they wanted to thank everyone for speaking today. It's great to hear from such intelligent and accomplished women, so much great insight and advice. So she just wanted to thank all of you. Okay. So I guess we're in our last couple of minutes. I know time went fast. Are there any, I guess, final thoughts that maybe each of the panelists would like to share, or even opportunities? So our students often will ask about, they really connect with each of you, and they'll ask about opportunities to learn from your wisdom. So any last thoughts or opportunities that you want to share with our students? And whoever wants to go first. So
Yes, I will share that I love having interns. It's one of the best things ever. I love them. I love it. I love it. I've had an amazing opportunity to work with some amazing women and men who are now in their next stages of their careers at the Desert Botanical Gardens, at the Musical Instrument Museum, at the Smithsonian in DC. And I've been able to mentor and work with interns for both marketing and museum studies. The organization that I work for, Cultural Coalition, we will be putting out our spring internships actually pretty soon. It's November already. But we will be looking for interns for marketing, digital media, as well as event production, as well as help in our museum collections. We're looking to start launching our next phase, which is the virtual exhibitions. And we're doing little pop-up exhibits throughout downtown Mesa soon. So we'd love some help with that.
So should students just go to your website? Should students just go to your website to apply?
Yes, so I dropped that one in the chat, but I'll also say if you have any questions, because we don't have any of the new descriptions up yet, because we haven't announced them, you can also just email me in case you're like, oh, what's all that about? I'd love to talk.
As a freelancer, I'm not in a position, unfortunately, to hire interns, but there are some really great opportunities at like the public radio station in Phoenix and some other places. Some of those places tend to prefer people who are majoring in journalism. So if anyone is looking to kind of think about applying their, and their SHESC experience to a journalistic type of endeavor, if you just send me an email, I'd be happy to like give you some suggestions of places to maybe apply or things to think about. Another thing you can also do is ask people to shadow, like even if you're not doing a formal internship, you could just ask like, can I come in and watch the radio show for a day? Can I follow you when you do an interview? Can I sit in on your pitch meeting? Like you can kind of get a sense of like how things work that way. And when I first started out, that was an extremely helpful way for me to get a sense of the inner workings of some of these places. But if folks want to, are interested and they want to reach out to me, I'm happy to talk it through.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would say for my job in kind of more global health consulting and programming, they prefer people with master's degrees or a couple of years of experience. But if that's something that you're interested in, I can drop linksbridge.com/careers. We're always continually hiring for trainee consultants, which is what I entered as, or graduate internships, which is generally a path to full-time employment also. So in the meantime, I'd recommend getting involved wherever you can, like local county or state public health departments. ASU projects are always great paths because the professors have so many resources. and just finding things that interest you to gain that experience in the meantime.
Sorry, could I just add one thing too, which
Sure.
is don't sleep on other departments. The other thing too is that I'm a journalism fellow right now in a project through the Center for the Study of Religion and Conflict, and it's the SHPRA program, the School of Historical, Philosophical,
Shippers.
Religious Shippers. Okay, yeah.
You're good.
So anyway, they do a program where they bring together religious study scholars and journalists. I've done stuff where there's like the public health school has done stuff where they bring together like journalists who report on health and like public health students. So there's also things like that too, where you can see interdisciplinary collaborations. And if there's a particular area you're interested in, like check out what those other departments outside of SHESC are doing too, because they may have specific programs that could be helpful to you.
And I guess just to kind of wrap it up, if anybody's interested at all in talking more about mental health while you're going through school, it's personally something that I'm super passionate about just because of my experiences and because of kind of where I'm at trajectory wise in terms of social work, or any interest in the social work field, how to get involved, how to find opportunities in Phoenix, or if you're interested in the University of Michigan, since they do have a pretty good program, feel free to just reach out and ask any questions. I'd be happy to talk more about all of it.
And then Shanisha, you want to share anything from career services that our students may be able to take advantage of to help with some of these different opportunities?
Yes, thank you. You can, sorry, I'm trying to fix myself. You can connect with one of our advisors through an advising appointment, and have those type of career exploration conversations. If you're trying to figure out what path you should do, we can help you figure that out. Resume reviews, cover letters, as well as handouts that can be found on our website, career.asu.edu.
And then I'll just say we do have our research apprenticeship program, Wanderly's, our advisor that oversees some of that. So we have that on our website. We have internships. So if you do get an internship with some of our panelists and you want to get credit for it, that's an opportunity as well. So, we want to help you maximize your experience and some of the advice that our panelists share today. So thank you again. I can't thank our panelists enough for just taking time and just being so genuine and sharing about your journey, some of the challenges, as well as, your successes. And then also for our students that are here, this is recorded. So eventually we will have this on our website that you can go back and review if there's something that you missed, as well as their contact information. So enjoy the rest of your day, and we're halfway through the week. So thank you so much.
Thank you.